Alright, what is going on, guys? I hope you guys are all good. Alright, so now we're going to start working on and looking at the sections for paper 2 of our GCSE Psychology. We're going to start off by looking at conformity. Let's get on it. So the definition of conformity, what is it? So it's a form of social influence in which a person yields to group pressure in the absence of any explicit order or request from another person to comply. So in essence, it's when a person changes their thinking and or behavior to fit in with a group. We're going to start by looking at Asch's conformity study from 1951. Now this is a very important study in terms of understanding conformity, and it's one that you guys are going to need to be very aware of for your exam. So starting off with the aim of the study. The aim of the study was to investigate whether people would conform to a majority even when the correct answer is obvious. Specifically, to see if social pressure from a unanimous majority affects a person's judgment in a simple, unambiguous task. What was the methodology? How did they go about finding out whether that would be the case? Well, here on the left we can see that we've got a red line and we've got A, B, C, and it asks us which line is the same length as the line on the left. So the methodology. The experiment consisted of 123 American male college students. The procedure: each participant was placed into a group with 6 to 8 confederates or actors. So remember, a confederate is somebody who's working alongside the researcher. They completed a line judgment task and they had to match one standard line with one of 3 comparison lines. We're going to have a look at that in a second. The confederates all gave the same wrong answer on 12 out of the 18 trials, and these were what are known as the critical trials. The real participant always answered either last or second to last. There was a control group, and the participants completed the task alone to ensure that the task was easy, so it was really easy to complete. Let's have a look at that task now. So here, as I said, on the left we can see where it says line, we've got that red line. Participants were asked, okay, which one of these lines, A, B or C, is the same as our comparison line? So is it A, B or C? Now as you guys can see, the obvious answer is A, but the confederates all gave the wrong answer. What do you guys think happened? Let's have a look. So the findings. The conformity rate. On average, participants conform to the wrong answer about 33% of the time. That's a third of the time. Overall, 75% conformed at least once, and 25% never conformed at all. They conducted interviews after the study, and what most people said was that they didn't actually believe the incorrect answers, but conformed to avoid standing out. And this is what's called normative social influence. Normative social influence. So think of the word normal. You want to appear normal, i.e. the same as everyone else around you, so you may change your behavior. So that is normative social influence. We're going to look at some of the strengths and weaknesses. Now when it comes to you guys' exam paper, you're going to be asked to either explain or evaluate. Now when you're explaining, you're going to be looking at what we looked at before. So the aim, the method, and the findings. When it comes to evaluating, so make sure that you're reading those questions very well. So when it comes to evaluating, we're going to be looking at and thinking about the strengths and the weaknesses. So some of the strengths. We had high control of the variables. Remember, any lab experiment is going to allow you to establish clear cause and effect. It demonstrated the powerful effect of normative social influence. And these findings have been replicated in different cultural contexts and other places throughout time. What about the weaknesses? So it had low ecological validity. So it was an artificial task and a situation that doesn't really reflect real life conformity. So remember, the majority of the time when we conduct a lab experiment, it's going to lack ecological validity. And remember, ecological validity is how well something represents the real world. Cultural bias. Remember, only American males in the 1950s. And this was a time of strong social conformity. Yeah, and that may mean that the results won't necessarily be generalizable to today, because our society in the modern age is different than what it was in the 1950s. There was deception, so there are some ethical issues that may arise. Participants believed that the other participants, but we know they were confederates, were also real people, and this could potentially lead to psychological distress. It also lacks population validity. So remember, only male college students were selected for the trial, so this cannot be generalized across gender or age groups. So what are some of the social factors that may impact conformity? Things like the group size. So conformity increases as group size increases, but only up to a point. It gets to a certain point in terms of the group size, and that has an impact on conformity, but then above that, it doesn't kind of continue to go up as you increase the amount of people. So classic research, i.e. the Asch study that we just looked at, found that 3 to 4 people is the optimal pressure. After that, the effect of that social pressure just plateaus, it just kind of flattens out. And the reason for this might be that more people expressing the same view increases perceived correctness. So some of the strengths of this idea is that it's supported by controlled research, i.e. the Asch study that we just looked at. Asch systematically varied group size and found conformity increased up to 3 confederates, then it started to level off. This shows a reliable, replicable relationship between group size and also conformity. What about the limitations? Well, it was an artificial task, as we know it lacked ecological validity. Judging the line length, as we said, is quite trivial and it's not realistic. It isn't a type of thing that we're going to have to be doing in everyday life. And as we know, as we said, conformity in real life, things like peer pressure, workplace decisions, these likely involve far more complex social dynamics. Another limitation is that there is cultural and temporal bias. So as I said before, during the 1950s, particularly in America, there was a high level of conformism. There's a high conformist culture following the Cold War. Later replications show lower conformity, suggesting findings on group size may not be generalizable across eras or cultures. So unanimity and anonymity, these are two things that also can affect conformity. So when we find that a group is unanimous, or when they all agree, conformity is very high. If even one dissenter disagrees or gives a different answer, conformity can drop dramatically. So a reason for this might be that a supporter provides social validation and reduces that level of pressure needed, i.e. to fit in with the rest of the group. The strength of this idea is that, again, it's supported by research, i.e. the Asch study and variations of that. When participants wrote answers privately, conformity dropped significantly. So rather than saying A, B, or C, when they had to write it down, then conformity dropped. And it supports the idea that normative social influence drives public conformity, i.e. the fear of judgment. Another strength is that we can apply it to the real world, and it helps explain why online environments where people are more anonymous show reduced conformity to majority norms but increased independence. And that's useful for designing things like surveys or whistleblowing systems. Another limitation is that it might not, again, reflect real life social pressures. So true anonymity is rare in real life. People often know each other, they might be friends or colleagues, so it isn't really completely anonymous. Lab anonymity might oversimplify how social judgment works, again, in the real world. Task difficulty can affect conformity. So if you find a task is more difficult or it's more ambiguous, then people are more likely to conform. So if they're not really sure of what it is that they're doing or how to do it, then they're more likely to look around them and just conform to what everyone else is doing. Because they look to others for social cues. And what this is called informative social influence. Informative social influence. So we're looking around to others for information on how to act, how to behave, what to do. Strength of this is that it's supported by Asch's research again. So when the line differences were made more ambiguous, conformity increased. So when it was more difficult to identify the difference between the line sizes and which one was actually the correct answer, conformity increased. And this suggests that people rely on others when uncertain. And again, that is informative social influence. Limitation is individual differences. So confidence and expertise reduce the effect of task difficulty. So research conducted by Perrin and Spencer found engineering students conformed far less even when tasks were difficult. And this suggests that task difficulty does not affect everyone equally. So it's not just kind of one size fits all. Another limitation is that ambiguity in real life tasks is different. So real life difficult decisions, example, things like making legal choices or making choices in terms of like medical treatments, these involve stakes. they involve emotions, they involve consequences, and you can't capture this with a task that is conducted in the lab. Dispositional factors. So what are dispositional factors? These are things that are individual to us, so things like our personality type. So if you have a high need for social approval, individuals who strongly value being liked or accepted are far more likely to conform. People with low self-esteem, again, are more likely to doubt their own judgment and follow the group. Those of us who suffer with high anxiety may also conform to avoid conflict or uncertainty. People who are highly agreeable, one of the big five, the ocean, people that are highly agreeable, they're more cooperative and are going to be more compliant, and they tend to conform more also. The locus of control. Now, locus of control is a concept that we will look at later on, but it is in essence how much we believe we are responsible for the things that happen to us. So if you have either an internal or an external locus of control. If you have an internal locus of control, say for example you sit your exam and you don't do too well in it. If you have an internal locus of control, you're going to say to yourself, do you know what, I didn't really revise enough, I could have revised more, that's how I could have done better. So you're blaming yourself. If you have an external locus of control, same results, same bad results for your exam, you'll say, do you know what, the test was too difficult, or we didn't cover that in class. You blame an external factor for what has happened to you. So that's just a kind of quick breakdown of what the locus of control is, internal and external. So locus of control. If you have an external locus of control, there you're going to have a higher level of conformity, so more conformity, because they believe that behavior is influenced by others. Whereas an internal locus of control is going to have less conformity, and you're going to trust in your own judgment. I said before about the engineering student, so expertise/confidence. So if you're more confident, knowledgeable, or skilled, then you're less likely to conform. Perrin and Spencer, as I said before, found that engineering students were far less likely to conform than Asch's original participants. We're going to look at the study conducted by Muzaffar Sharif in 1935, and this was another study around conformity. So the aim of this study was quite simple. Sharif used a visual illusion where a stationary point of light in a dark room appeared to move, even though it didn't. His methodology: participants were alone, and this was the individual norms phase. Each participant estimated how far the light moved. The estimates varied widely between each participant. Then, participants were in groups of 2 and 3, the group norm phase. Participants gave estimates out loud with others present. Over time, their estimates started to converge and become very similar. Participants were then asked alone again. Their estimates stayed close to the group's earlier norm, showing internalization. And what were the findings? Well, in ambiguous situations, people turn to others for information. So again, informative social influence. Individual estimates shifted towards the group norm, showing conformity through informational social influence. The group norm persisted even when participants were alone, and this is evidence of internalization, so taking those beliefs and those understandings into oneself and internalizing those ideas. And in conclusion, Sharif concluded that people use others as a frame of reference when unsure. Conformity occurs because individuals want to be correct, not just accepted. Ambiguous tasks increase reliance on group norms, and this directly contrasts with Asch 1951, whose task was unambiguous and produced mostly normative social influence. Alright guys, hopefully that gives you a better understanding of conformity and Asch's influential line study, and also Muzaffar Sharif's light study. As I said, this was the first section for our paper 2 content. This is from our social influence section. So catch you guys in the next one. Peace.